Hi, dear, and welcome back to Timeless Wisdom. Let me ask you something. Have you ever settled into your favorite chair, tea in hand, and started reflecting on how certain people make you feel? Maybe you notice that being around them leaves you feeling smaller, more tired, or simply less like yourself. If you're nodding along, you're not alone. As we move into new chapters of life, many of us begin to see a truth we've often ignored. Some of our old connections just aren't good for us anymore. It's easy to hold on to relationships out of habit or history, especially when they go back decades or involve family. We tell ourselves, maybe it's just me, maybe this is normal. But deep down, we sense when something is off, when a friendship or bond that once felt supportive now quietly drains our joy or shakes our confidence. Today, in this timeless wisdom conversation, I want to gently and honestly talk about those subtle signs it might be time to let go, even if that feels difficult. This isn't about being cold or shutting people out. It's about giving yourself permission to value your peace, your energy, and your happiness. It's about growth and living with dignity as we get older. Let's start with one of those everyday situations that can reveal so much. Have you noticed how some people always seem to have enough money for what they want, but suddenly become frugal when it's about you? Maybe you've had a friend who claims they need to save every penny when it's your suggestion, but will happily spend on themselves or others. Or perhaps you know someone who always forgets their wallet when the bill arrives, conveniently every time. Of course, there are real moments when someone genuinely can't afford something, and we all need compassion for that. But it feels different when someone uses money as a shield, avoiding effort, generosity, or real commitment, especially when it comes to you. I remember someone from my past who always hesitated when we made plans. "I can't really afford it," he'd say, and I believed him, until I started noticing he'd bought new gadgets, gone on trips, and treated other people to outings. That's when I realized it wasn't about money. It was about what he valued. And sadly, I wasn't high on that list. That truth stung. But it also taught me something. Real relationships are built on fairness and mutual care. It isn't always a perfect split, but both people should feel seen and supported. If you're always the one who reaches out, who makes the plans, who gives and gives, while the other person just takes, or worse, makes you feel guilty for even asking, then it's more than just exhausting. It's a sign that the relationship isn't balanced. And no matter how much history you share, a one-sided relationship can't thrive for long. Remember, you deserve friendships and connections that feel reciprocal, not draining. And sometimes the bravest, wisest thing you can do is let go of what no longer brings light to your life. Now let me ask you something else. Have you ever been around someone who just can't help themselves from stirring up conflict? You're talking about something harmless, plans for the weekend, a memory from years ago, and suddenly it becomes a debate. Their tone shifts, their eyes narrow, and before you know it, you're being pulled into an argument you never asked for. Some people, unfortunately, live off drama. They turn every difference into a battleground, and worse, they often demand loyalty at your expense. Whose side are you on? They'll ask, as though relationships are a game to win rather than a space to grow. I once had a friend like this. From the outside, he was charming, confident, even fun. But if you disagreed with him about anything, he would twist it into a test. One night, we were at a dinner with old friends, just chatting about a vacation idea, one tiny disagreement, and suddenly he was pressing me in front of everyone. "Tell them I'm right. You agree with me, don't you?" I froze, not because I couldn't speak, but because I didn't want to keep playing that game. That was the moment I realized something vital. Peace is not found in proving ourselves right. It's found in walking away from battles that don't matter. People who thrive on arguments, who can't accept differences, or who pull you into their emotional storms are not just difficult. They're dangerous to your spirit. And it's not always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, but just as harmful. Let's take another example. Have you ever shared something vulnerable? Maybe a worry, a moment of grief, a bit of your day that felt heavy, and had it brushed aside like it was nothing? Or worse, flipped around into someone else's story as if your pain didn't matter. It's a painful feeling to be unseen like that. I remember once opening up to a long-time friend about my mother's declining health. I wasn't looking for pity, just someone to sit with me in the heaviness of it. But instead of listening, she immediately jumped in. "Oh, you think that's bad? You should hear about my week." And just like that, I disappeared. It's in those moments that something becomes clear. Not everyone is capable of holding space for you. Not everyone has the emotional maturity or compassion to pause their own needs and truly see yours. And when a relationship is built on one person always talking, always centering their own experience, it stops being a relationship. It becomes a monologue, and you're just the audience. We can't control other people, only our response to them. And part of that wisdom means recognizing when someone isn't able or willing to meet us in mutual respect. It means stepping back, not in anger, but in understanding. Not because we've given up on kindness, but because we've chosen to give it to ourselves first. As we age, our time becomes even more precious. Every conversation, every interaction carries more weight. And that's not something to take lightly. You've earned the right to protect your peace, your energy, and your joy. You've earned the right to walk away from people who no longer walk beside you with honesty and care. So if you've been feeling uneasy around someone lately, if your heart sinks a little when their name shows up on your phone, pause, reflect, ask yourself this: do I feel more alive, more whole after spending time with them? Or do I feel smaller, more anxious, more lost? That answer matters. It always has. Let's keep walking this path together. There's more to uncover and more wisdom waiting just ahead. Now, let's take a moment to breathe. I want you to sit with this next thought, not with judgment, but with compassion for yourself. Think back to someone in your life who, for whatever reason, always seems to make light of your worries. You share something that's weighing on you, maybe something deeply personal or painful, and they respond with a shrug, or worse, a joke. They may say, "Oh, that's nothing. You should hear what I've been through." Or they try to fix things with dismissive advice like, "Just get over it." And when it happens, it stings. You walk away wondering if you're being too sensitive or if you should just stop sharing altogether. But the truth is, your feelings matter. They are valid, and being heard is not a luxury. It's a basic human need. I remember a man I met during a local community class. He was kind, funny, and full of life stories. But when I shared a quiet struggle I was going through, caring for a loved one in poor health, his face didn't change. He simply shifted the topic to a story about his golf game that weekend. I don't think he meant harm, but in that moment I felt invisible. And that's the key, isn't it? Being around someone who consistently fails to acknowledge your pain, your joy, your humanness, it creates an emptiness, a one-sided silence, and over time, that silence can erode even the strongest self-esteem. You start wondering if your experiences even matter. A healthy relationship, no matter your age, is built on emotional safety. When someone makes light of your worries or sees their pain as more important than yours, it's a signal, a very clear one, that the balance is broken. That doesn't mean you stop being kind. It doesn't mean you become cold or distant, but it might mean stepping back. It might mean realizing that you can care about someone without keeping them close, and sometimes it's not even the dismissive comments that leave us hurting. Sometimes it's a look, a sigh, a sarcastic tone. And then there's the person who never says thank you, who never apologizes, who seems to take your presence for granted. You do something thoughtful. Bring them a meal, offer your time, give your ear, and instead of appreciation, you get silence, or worse, entitlement. That lack of gratitude, it eats away at the heart. When someone can't say thank you, it doesn't just reflect bad manners. It reflects a lack of recognition for your effort, your time, your care. And when apologies never come, even after they've clearly hurt you, it becomes painfully clear that they value their pride more than your peace. I once knew a woman, a neighbour actually, who had a way of making everything seem like a competition. If I mentioned something joyful, say, my grandson's recent accomplishment, she would immediately try to one-up it. Or, if I shared something difficult, she would roll her eyes and change the subject. Over time, I realized she didn't celebrate with me, and she didn't sit with me in sorrow either. Her world only had room for one person, herself. And here's something I want you to hear. You deserve better. You deserve to be around people who say thank you when you do something kind, who say, I'm sorry, when they've made a mistake, who clap when you succeed and sit beside you when you fall. That kind of relationship doesn't require grand gestures. It lives in the little things. A warm word, a soft glance, a shared silence that says, I see you and I care. When someone can't offer those things, not once, but repeatedly, it's not unkind to walk away. It's wise. We don't control how others act, only how we choose to respond. And choosing peace, choosing to step away from those who consistently disrespect, disregard, or diminish us, that's not weakness. That's strength. That's clarity. I know that for many of us, especially as we get older, there's a temptation to hold on to every relationship, simply because of history. We've known each other since high school, you might say. He's my brother. She's my oldest friend. But let me gently ask you this. Is history enough if it costs your present joy? Because here's the truth we sometimes forget. We are allowed to grow. We are allowed to change. And just as we outgrow clothes, routines, or even cities, we can outgrow relationships. That doesn't make us heartless. It makes us human. And sometimes, after we create that distance, something beautiful happens. The space we create allows for healing, reflection, and yes, even better connections to emerge, ones where we are seen, heard, and valued, not for what we give, but for who we are. So if any of these stories remind you of someone in your life, someone who drains your spirit, mocks your pain, or forgets your worth, I want you to know it's okay. It's okay to feel hurt. It's okay to take time, and it's absolutely okay to walk away if your heart tells you the weight is too much. Because life after 60, 70, or 80 isn't about shrinking. It's about blooming into who you've always been meant to be, fully, freely, and without apology. And that journey, it deserves quiet. It deserves light. It deserves people who protect your peace, not shatter it. Let's continue. There's more to uncover. There's something deeply powerful about realizing that not all friendships are meant to last a lifetime. Some people come into our lives to teach us lessons, to walk beside us for a season, and then life naturally takes us in different directions. And yet, when that happens, we often feel a quiet grief, a tug at the heart, as if letting go means we've failed somehow. But letting go doesn't always mean abandoning someone. Sometimes it simply means honoring what the relationship once was, and accepting that it no longer serves who we are today. Have you ever had someone in your life who once brought you so much joy, maybe laughter that left your belly aching, memories that still make you smile? But now, when you're with them, something just feels off. You can't quite explain it. The conversation feels forced. You don't laugh like you used to. You leave feeling more alone than when you arrived. This shift doesn't always happen because of a fight or betrayal. Sometimes it happens quietly, over years. We grow, they grow, but in different ways. Our values change, our perspectives evolve, and suddenly we find ourselves standing beside someone we barely recognize anymore. And that's okay. One man I spoke with recently told me about his best friend from high school. They were inseparable in their youth. Camping trips, late-night talks, the kind of bond that feels unbreakable. But as time passed, their lives took different paths. One moved away, built a career, raised a family. The other stayed in their hometown, lived a simpler life. When they met up decades later, it wasn't the same. The connection felt distant. They both tried to keep it alive, but the silence between conversations grew louder each time. Eventually the man said, "I realized we were trying to keep something alive that had already ended, not out of love, but out of habit." So he chose to gently step back, not with resentment, but with gratitude for what had been. That's what real maturity looks like, not clinging to the past, but learning to carry it forward with respect, without forcing it into your present. There's a quiet dignity in releasing people who no longer fit in your life, and sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself, and even for them, is to walk away. Now, I want to ask you something that might feel uncomfortable, but I ask it with care. Have you ever found yourself playing the role of an emotional dumping ground? You know what I mean, a person in your life, maybe a friend, a sibling, even a neighbour, calls or drops by, and every conversation revolves around their problems, their complaints, their pain. And you listen again and again. You try to help, you offer advice, you give them your time, your energy, your attention, but they never ask how you are, they never pause to check in on your heart. And if you do try to open up, they change the subject right back to themselves. At first, you tell yourself they're going through a tough time, that you're being a good friend. But after a while, you start to feel drained, not just tired, but emotionally emptied out. As if you've been carrying their weight for so long you forgot what it felt like to stand up straight. There's a difference between supporting someone and being used as a place to unload. One is rooted in love and balance. The other, it's imbalance disguised as friendship. And if someone can't be there for you, even in your hardest moments, then it's time to reconsider the role they play in your life. I remember a woman who shared her story with me. Let's call her Margaret. She spent years being the strong one in her circle. Whenever someone had a crisis, they called Margaret. When someone needed help moving, needed money, needed advice, they turned to her. But when Margaret's husband passed away and she needed someone to talk to, the phone never rang. The people she had held up for so long were suddenly silent. That's when Margaret realized she hadn't built friendships. She had built dependency. And the moment she could no longer give, the relationship faded. It was a painful awakening, but also a freeing one, because from that day forward, Margaret stopped saying yes to everyone else and started saying yes to herself. And that brings us to something else that might sound familiar: promises, or more accurately, broken promises. Maybe you've been on the receiving end of one too many "I'll be there," only to find yourself sitting alone. Maybe you've waited for calls that never came, or planned meals that were cancelled last minute without so much as an apology. It doesn't take many of those moments to start feeling like an afterthought in someone else's life. And while everyone makes mistakes now and then, there's a difference between occasional forgetfulness and a pattern of disregard. When someone constantly forgets their commitments to you, what they're really saying without using words is, "You're not important enough to remember." Think about how that feels. You clear your calendar, prepare your home, maybe even cook a meal. You show up and they don't, or they come late, or they act as if it doesn't matter. Over time, this kind of treatment chips away at your self-worth. You start wondering if you're asking for too much, when in truth, all you're asking for is respect. Respect doesn't require wealth, or youth, or status. It's free, and it should be the foundation of every relationship in your life. So if there's someone in your world who consistently breaks promises, forgets your time, or takes your presence for granted, it's okay to step back. It's okay to say, "My time matters. My feelings matter." Because they do. They always have. You've lived through enough by now to know what a meaningful relationship looks like. It's not perfect, it's not always easy, but it's mutual. It uplifts, it listens, it shows up. And here's something I truly hope you take to heart. Protecting your peace doesn't mean you're selfish. It means you're finally ready to live in alignment with the wisdom you've earned. It means honoring your journey, your boundaries, and your beautiful, irreplaceable spirit. We're not done yet. Let's keep going. Have you ever had the same conversation with someone over and over again about the same problem, the same pain, the same complaint, and nothing ever changes? You listen, you nod, maybe you offer a few kind words or even practical suggestions. But days, weeks, sometimes years later, you find yourself right back in the same conversation. Nothing has shifted, except maybe your patience. This isn't about being cold or lacking empathy, quite the opposite. But if someone keeps coming to you with the same worries and never takes even the smallest step forward, you begin to feel like you're not helping anymore. You're just holding a space that never gets filled. At first, it feels generous to be that shoulder to lean on, but eventually it starts to feel like quicksand. The more you stand still in their struggle, the more you feel yourself sinking too, and the hard truth is, not everyone wants to grow. Some people are more comfortable in their pain than in the effort it takes to heal, and if you try to carry that weight for them, you'll lose your balance. There's a quiet strength in knowing when to stop simply comforting and start being honest. I once told a friend gently, "I love you, but if you don't want to change your situation, I can't keep listening to you relive it." It was hard. She didn't take it well, but in time, she came back and thanked me. Not for fixing her, but for finally being real with her. That's the kind of courage we build as we grow older. The courage to speak with compassion and clarity, because kindness without truth can become enabling, and truth without kindness can become cruelty. But when we learn to hold both, that's when we start to truly help the people around us, and, more importantly, ourselves. Now, let's talk about something that may feel a little closer to home than we'd like. Those people who can't stop talking about themselves, not just occasionally, but constantly. The ones who fill every silence with stories about their past, what they achieved, who they knew, what they did decades ago. At first, it may feel charming, maybe even impressive, but over time it becomes clear that they're clinging to those moments, not just with pride, but with desperation. It's not the past that's the problem, it's the refusal to live in the present. When someone can only talk about who they were and never reflect on who they are now, it leaves the relationship stuck. There's no depth, no mutual exploration, no space for your voice. Just a one-sided show, again and again. I once had an acquaintance like that. Every meeting, he would recount the same stories about his awards, his former job title, the people he used to know. And while those stories were meaningful at first, eventually I realized something heartbreaking. He was telling them because he didn't believe he had anything left to offer now. But the truth is, your value doesn't expire with age. It doesn't disappear with retirement or dim with the passing of time. In fact, for many of us, our deepest wisdom, our quietest strength, and our richest contributions come later in life, when we've seen enough, felt enough, and grown enough to truly understand what matters. When someone can't stop boasting, it's often a mask for their insecurity. And when a relationship becomes all about one person's past glory, it stops being a shared space. That doesn't mean you stop caring for them, but it may mean stepping back, making space for conversations that nourish you too. Because life is still happening now, your days are still meaningful, and you deserve to spend your time with people who live in the present with you, not just those who relive the past in front of you. Before we wrap up, let's take a quiet moment together here on Timeless Wisdom. Think back on all we've discussed today, the little warning signs, the emotional ups and downs, the truth about relationships that may be costing us our peace. It's never easy to say goodbye to people who've been part of our story for so long. It can feel like a loss, even when you know it's the right choice. But sometimes, giving yourself permission to let go is the most caring thing you can do, not just for yourself, but for the other person too. Choosing peace doesn't mean shutting the door on others with resentment or regret. It means respecting your boundaries and making sure you're surrounded by people who celebrate you, listen to you, and care about the real you. Right now, not just who you were years ago. You've come this far. You've lived through change, loss, love, and growth. Isn't it time you started treating yourself with the same compassion you offer everyone else? If anything from today's episode touched your heart or got you thinking, I want you to remember, you're not alone in this. So many people in our Timeless Wisdom community are quietly searching for the same peace, rethinking old patterns and learning that it's absolutely okay to choose joy over guilt or obligation. If you'd like, share your thoughts in the comments, maybe a moment that stuck with you, or even just a single word that feels right, like release or hope. That one word can be a small step toward the life you want to create. If you found a bit of comfort here, give this video a thumbs up so others can discover it too. And if you'd like to keep growing with us, exploring gentle wisdom, stronger relationships, and more happiness after 60, subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll never miss an episode. Above all, remember this: you are worthy of kindness, you are worthy of real connection, and you deserve a life that feels lighter, brighter, and more peaceful. Here's to leaving behind what no longer brings you joy and opening yourself up to all the beautiful possibilities ahead. Thank you for being here with me, and I look forward to seeing you next time on Timeless Wisdom.